Support for CFO Thought Leader comes from Ledge and US Bank.
Hi, it's Aaron Alt, the CFO at Cardinal Health, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 1053.
In the spirit of partnership and collaboration, I really think that a successful strategic CFO is engaged with every single one of the ELT members. So really getting integrated with the team cross-functionally, partnering with marketing to understand pipeline generation, marketing efficiency, our digital strategy, our account-based strategy, with product on roadmap and ROI, with sales on productivity, pipeline health, deals. We've got a deals team, with our investors on the long-range planning and, desired strategic outcomes, with human resources on performance management and incentive compensation. And then going back to this concept of the sailboat, it's just becoming the rudder to the sailboat to get the right balance between growth and profitability, and just sort of having that be my number one mandate, is watching the course of action so that we're getting the most growth we can.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Chris Nagy, CFO of Salesloft. In March 2020, as global lockdowns swept across industries, Chris Nagy faced a defining moment as a finance leader. Overnight, his then company lost 25% of its revenue due to shuttered in-person facilities. Rising to the challenge, Nagy led a rapid pivot, reallocating resources to fast-track a video conferencing product that had in the past been shelved. By year-end, the new solution recovered half of the lost revenue. But Nagy's COVID chapter didn't stop there. Soon, he was brokering a merger with a close competitor. Together, they would ultimately form a new entity altogether. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co, that's ledge.co, to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift. Hello, we're speaking with Chris Nagy, CFO of Salesloft. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Jack, first of all, I want to just thank you for having me back on the podcast. Since we met earlier this year, I've actually been a listener of the CFO Thought Leader. It now shows up as a favorite. So in the section I open up in my Spotify account, and I found the podcast really inspiring and insightful. I particularly enjoyed a couple of episodes, one with Clemente Cohen, who's my successor at PG Forsta.
Oh,
podcast with you back in August. He's got a great team over there, including Richie Peckfelder, who heads up the FP&A team. And more recently, I was really interested in episode 1041 with John Schwartz from Metadata about rethinking metrics to align with business evolution.
Yeah, great. Well, that's great feedback for us. Thank you, Chris. Good to know that you're also a listener as well as a participant here, or a victim, let's say. Let's just kick off again and just take us back. And Chris, I remember you had an interesting background. It's a little different from some of our finance leader guests, but typically everyone's a little different when they look back in time. Tell us about your path, Chris.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I think my path to CFO probably starts before I even started my career. Look, I was a highly numerate kid, a bit of a math kid. I came from a family of engineers. My grandfather was an engineer. My father studied to be an engineer and ended up becoming a physics teacher. So I kind of learned math and science at the kitchen table. My mother, who's French, we went to France, age 7 and 8. I lived there, and I came back and was testing 3 levels ahead of all the other kids in the standardized testing. I found myself reading, logic books like, The Lady or the Tiger by Raymond Smullyan, which are sort of these math puzzles. And one day I found an algebra book in my grandfather's, attic. It was an old, dusty, it didn't have a cover on it. And I opened it up and I actually didn't know it was algebra. I thought it was a puzzle book. So I voraciously worked my way through this algebra book before even really understanding what I was looking at. I thought I was solving a bunch of puzzles. Then number 2, as I kind of got into my career, I find that, there's a changing mandate for the CFO, and it's kind of up and to the right. Some CFOs start in accounting, others start in FP&A. I started in a very commercial role in pricing, and doing commercial finance and bid management. And that was a really interesting place to start, because I got, very curious about really important market dynamics, like what the market will bear from a price perspective, what the competitive dynamics are, willingness to pay by the customer, value differentiation. But it also got me interested in these big volume deals and discounting dynamics and then the company profits that result from that. And I was working a lot with the sales organization to secure these large outsourcing deals. And oftentimes the conversation would basically go like this: hey, if we don't offer these significant discounts, then they're going to go to the competition. So that kind of forced me to not only rethink the value proposition that we were offering our customers, but also do kind of swivel chair 180 degrees back into the operations of the company to really try to better understand the scale economics, the operational efficiency. And I was just sort of asking myself, how is it possible the competition is able to price at these levels? And I think that really was my first pivot point into my journey on becoming a CFO.
And at the time, though, are you thinking of yourself as a finance person or an operations executive, or a little of both?
I mean, that's a very good question. Interestingly enough, joining as a pricing analyst, I was in the marketing department for some time. There was a little bit of an organizational shift, and I found myself reporting to the CFO. Pricing was one of those roles, could kind of go into marketing, could kind of go into finance. And so in the mid-90s, first CFO I ever worked for was a gentleman by the name of Doug Gilstrap, still a good friend of mine today, 30 years later. He went on to become a very successful CEO and PE investor, and he gave me the opportunity to participate in things like the IPO we did in 1998. And he went on to be a founder of Radians and asked me to join the founding team. But what I remember about those conversations was, going back to sort of puzzle solving, is he helped me reimagine what it meant to be a CFO. It wasn't just reporting the news. It wasn't just about, the accounting and the numbers. It was really strategic business analytics. And it was like basically looking at the data to try to solve a puzzle or unravel a mystery. And that was really the fun part of it.
It's interesting. I don't think you wouldn't have gone down the accounting path. It just seems like that would not have been your door of entry into a career. And I'm talking about you as a young person way back then. You would never have found your way to finance, I don't think. It's interesting. Or would you disagree with that?
No, I would completely agree with that. I didn't get back to the accounting until years later when I went and got my MBA at Wharton. And, to me, that was rounding out the credentials of being a CFO. But it was much, much later in my career. It was when I was already in my 30s.
And it seems like at the same time you had this access, or you were reporting to a CFO. So in your earliest chapter, you have this connection with the CFO that you just shared with us. So it's interesting. That might have influenced some of your thinking, like, well, maybe it is a viable path, finance leadership path for me. Because otherwise, I think you could have gone any number of directions.
That's absolutely true. Jack, I mean, I actually remember being in college and having a friend of mine talk about his brother who was a CFO. And I remember saying, what's a CFO? I didn't even know what it was, at the age of 18 or 19 years old. And he explained it to me and I said, well, that sounds kind of boring. It sounds like a glorified accountant. But I think I learned, as I sort of entered the workforce, to think about it differently, and think about how it connects. It's sort of the connective tissue or the core structure of the strategy of the company. When you start modeling out the business and understanding how you kind of connect growth and profitability.
And that sort of becomes your path. It's a strategic path. Would you characterize it like that, or you become more influential in strategic planning? And how would you characterize it?
That's absolutely right. So, was very, very lucky to participate in IPO in the late 90s when there was a tech boom. So I got to see how that all worked. I was asked to join the founding team of a company called Radiance doing pricing. And so really connective tissue between the go-to-market, and the finance organization and the profitability. And then, went on to do strategic planning. And I think quite intentionally, the title was strategic planning as opposed to financial planning and analysis, because I was sitting alongside not only the CFO but the CEO and the head of strategy as we were marketing the company for sale. This was in 2009, right around the financial crisis.
And then we see also, and I remember touching on this with you once in the past, but you have this chapter that suddenly appears on your bio, which is BlackRock, and you had a sort of a beefy chapter there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at BlackRock for 6 years. I did 2 tours of duty there. I like to call it. They have sort of 3-year cycles, and one was with the trading and liquidity strategies group. The other one was with their big risk management, asset management system called Aladdin. But yeah, I contacted BlackRock through a connection probably a year or two earlier. I was interested in a position there, and had a cycle of interviews, and it kind of went dark. They didn't really get back to me, and I stayed above board. I was very polite. I followed up with the hiring manager probably once every 6 to 9 months, just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And out of the blue, one day I got a phone call. He says, "We have an open position. You want to come in and do another round of interviews?" And I got the job. It was. I'll just say one more thing about BlackRock. What I found the most interesting about the time at BlackRock is I had been in finance organizations that were relatively small up until then. And it sort of makes me think of middle school when you dissect a frog. You look at a frog and it's a frog, but then you start peeling it open and you see that there's a heart and there's lungs and there's, intestines and kidneys. And the finance department at BlackRock was so big that it was basically a decomposed version of all the other finance organizations I'd seen. So I was able to observe a treasury department, a tax department, an accounting policy department, an entire, business planning and analysis department. And it allowed me to sort of reconstruct those roles, even if they're coming in let's say smaller packages as I proceeded through my career.
Now, when you leave BlackRock, do you step quickly into a CFO role, or how does that happen?
Yeah, and look, one of the things that people often ask me is, hey, Chris, I really aspire to be a CFO, and what's your advice on how to get there? Look, the first thing I always say is everyone gets their first opportunity, right? Whether it be to be a CFO or a CEO or whatever it is you aspire to be. I was very, very fortunate and very grateful to Jennifer Nayar, who was one of the business leads at one of the companies I worked for, had gotten a job as CEO of NYFIX. She's an exceptional leader, an exceptional person. She's now the CEO of Sterling Trading Technologies, and she gave me my first opportunity to join her as CFO nearly a decade after knowing her in a previous role. She picked me because she had a hard time finding someone she thought would be able to sort of partner with her in the way that she wanted to. So it was a tremendous opportunity. Now,
we want to talk to you about Salesloft, of course, but you've had multiple CFO chapters now, several CFO chapters. And I'm just curious, that first step inside the CFO office, as you just related, it was a relationship, someone you knew. But did you come to rely on recruiters as you stepped into these other CFO roles? What's played a role for you here? Or is it your connection, your network?
Jack, it's almost exclusively been through people I know and connections. I have gotten to know the recruiting community. So now it's starting to triangulate a little bit more. Like oftentimes I'll hear about an opportunity and I'll see that there's somebody there, or sometimes simultaneously somebody will know me and say, "Hey, Chris, we really think you're a great fit for this job." And I'll also happen to be in touch with, the recruiters, maybe the recruiter within the private equity firm, to be frank. So yeah, I've really, nurtured, a network, of former colleagues and recruiters. I mean, not out of a burden, just because I really, like the connections I've made in the past and really, want to preserve them. So as I think about the daisy chain or, sort of the, the virtuous daisy chain of opportunities, they really have one stepping stone has typically led to another further down the road.
Well, Chris, we'll likely have a few more career-related questions for you, but right now let's find out about Salesloft. Tell us about this company. What's it about today? What are its offerings?
Yeah, I was very excited to join Salesloft about a quarter ago. So Salesloft powers durable revenue growth for the world's most demanding companies. Salesloft created an AI-powered revenue orchestration platform. So it basically takes sales enablement forward by a quantum leap by creating an AI-driven system of action. So I think I want to unpack that a little bit. The platform uses AI to help teams prioritize which actions to take and which actions matter the most from the first interaction all the way through the customer renewal. So the way to think about this is a few decades ago, we were introduced with the concept of a customer relationship management database. So we're all familiar with CRMs. They've been around since the late 90s, early 2000s. And that's sort of a system of record to support go-to-market and revenue activities. Before that, it might have been Rolodex. I wouldn't, not sure I even know. But over the last decade, there's been a growing demand for enhancements to the incumbent CRM systems, which are, a system of record. And what clients are really looking for is how do you enhance this with action and analytical intelligence? So over the last decade or so, several companies emerged offering different point solutions around improving workflow, either through structured workflow tools, forecasting, deal and performance tracking, sales executive coaching. And even during the pandemic, you had the emergence of something called conversational intelligence. When most sales calls were being on video, could be recorded, you would basically have the voice captured, transcribed, analyzed for sentiment, analysis, and actionable insight. And now that you have the maturity of AI coming to the stage, it's now supercharged, and you can do this all on a single enterprise-ready platform. So we can ingest first and third party buyer signals to understand where the buyer is on their journey, and then create workflow that gives any client or revenue organization an AI assisted view of best actions that will optimize the outcomes for both the buyers and the sellers. And this is what Salesloft has done. We've created, a single enterprise ready system of action that brings these point solutions together and really supercharges the go-to-market motion.
Can you give us a sort of a brief overview of the company's capital structure? And I know you just arrived, so it's not like you're the history major of the company, but is there anything more you can tell us about the history of the company's ownership?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a founder-led company, founded in 2011. It actually achieved unicorn status, series. I can't remember the letter of the series, but it was a bit. They raised several rounds. I think it was Series E, but I'd have to verify, fact check that one. But yeah, it got a $1 billion valuation in its last round before it was picked up by Vista.
Well, tell us, what is the chapter then when you arrive? You swing open the door. What is the chapter you're helping open for them?
Yeah. So, right now, we are in a new market, since 2022. Actually, I would say we're returning to, fundamentals, right? So we had 15 years of a very, low interest rates, very, easy money. And now there's the pendulum is swinging back to, a very, very, thoughtful balance between growth and profitability. And that's really what I'm focusing on. So it's a delicate balance. It sort of makes me think of, for anyone out there who's a sailor, of sailing. You have to find just the right spot, like sailing upwind and tacking upwind. You really are no longer in a position which companies were doing for a very long time, which is growth at any cost. And you can see this with the big tech companies. You can see this with, the big bracket tech companies, and everyone's kind of now, rationalizing back to fundamentals, which is, how do you think about, driving a sustainable business with strong fundamentals. And so that really, for me, is, in this type of growth enterprise software business, it's an oscillation between your go-to-market, selling what you have, and then developing the next generation of products. And you may see sort of an oscillation wave between these cycles in a 2 to 3 quarter period. And we're really focusing on striking the right balance so we have a sustainable model, a generational company, but that continues to grow and bring fantastic products to the market.
So part of what you're tasked with is helping everyone get familiar with the numbers that matter when you're paying attention to the fundamentals. It's no longer about growth, folks. That's not something we're chasing after as we were 4 or 5 years ago. It's now about the fundamentals.
It's no longer only about growth. I think I would say they both still matter. Being growthy or growth heavy is still a good thing.
When you're having those go-to-market meetings and collaborating with the different functional areas, what are the numbers that you're bringing to their attention and pointing out, we have to we need your team to better understand this number and grasp why we're all paying close attention to it?
It's really, really great. Look, and this is actually a really interesting use case for Salesloft. I mean, CFOs should be looking at Salesloft every day because you can start to get some leading indicators around customer health, product adoption, satisfaction and engagement, as well as, the sales efficiency, market efficiency and pipeline health. And these are things that show up far before you'll ever see them on the financial statements. And so if you're able to kind of lock in on what does durable revenue look like, what does profitable revenue look like, what does your lifetime value to customer acquisition cost look at? So to me it's like the new logo annualized contract value is important, cycle time for sales is important, percentage of contracts on multi-year is important, bookings efficiency is important, and then running out the remaining performance obligations that are on your books.
As a new CFO, someone who's just arrived, are you going to reorganize the team? And I constantly ask that question. Of course, the response is no, we're going to just make some changes. From your past experience, you must have preferences and an understanding of how, the finance function would work. What is the change that you're likely to make? What is the mindset you want to set for the finance team? How about that?
Yeah, sure. So I have sort of a model that I kind of take with me, a placemat that I take with me everywhere I go. And it's really 3 up and to the right building blocks. It's foundation, it's insights, and it's performance. And I think finance should have a seat at the table all the way up to performance. And so when I talk about foundation, that's the basics that you would kind of think of as the accounting. So it's a clear, solid, and reliable foundation of data. It's having good policies. It's the stuff that's kind of invisible. Like if you don't do it well, it's really a big problem. People don't get paid and you don't clear audits, but it's kind of invisible. Then you get into insights, and most companies do insights pretty well. You get into sort of the FP&A stuff, which is, thoughtful data-driven projections, turning the data into insights to fuel action. And you start thinking about, setting your budgets for the year and having departmental controls and, some reportings and metrics. But then you start getting into what I would call performance. That was my third building block. And I think they really build off of each other. And now you're actually thinking about how do I use not only the foundation of data we've created, but the insights we've generated to now drive performance in the organization. And this is really, poetically, it goes from the left to the right, just like your left brain goes to your right brain. It gets more and more creative and more collaborative the further you go up and to the right. And this is really about how do you engage with the commercial organization, with the marketing organization, the product organization to understand what's going to market and if it's going to drive that profitable growth that you're looking for. So I really see the mandate of the CFO and the office of the CFO to be accountable for the success of the company, not just report the numbers and generate KPIs.
When it comes to AI, tell us something about your thinking around that as a strategic lever for the company. What does it mean for Salesloft? When the AI conversation is about Salesloft, what is it about usually?
Yeah. So, I'd like to split this conversation, if you'd like, if it's okay, Jack, between market facing for product and then operational efficiency, which is internally. And so maybe I'll start with market facing. You could see really, really great use cases of AI that are coming forward. As an aside, there's a friend of mine, Neil Dixit, created this company called Glimpse. I used to work in survey software. Back then, survey software was the underlying code was a static decision tree, which, basically drove the survey creation, the distribution of the respondents, and collection of data analytics. He's now using AI at the front end to actually generate the survey, and then send to the respondents, actually selection of the respondents, and then when he gets it back, the AI then does all the data analytics and dashboarding, so you can basically ask it any question you want. It'll slice and dice the data. This, when you think about Salesloft on a full enterprise, platform, this becomes exponentially more powerful, right? Because it's applied now across the entire revenue orchestration platform that we just described. So we have agentic AI bots that are picking up the first and third party buyer signals. We're using our proprietary conductor AI, we call it, and this gets processed into the daily seller workflow. And so there's a module we call Rhythm, which creates the AI generated seller actions, which are constantly learning and recalibrating for the optimal outcome that'll lead to the higher conversion rates. So this is light years ahead of what used to be the old kind of spray and pray email campaigns of just a decade ago.
Nice overview, snapshots for us. We're going to move to what we refer to as our finance strategic moment question. This is where we ask you to share a story in your career where you had a moment of insight. And we know you might have had a few already today, but we're looking for just a good story about how finance plays a strategic role in business. What comes to mind for you?
So I'll go back to survey software days. I joined a company called Focus Vision in 2018 as the CFO. And part of our business was sort of survey software. The other part of our business was actually streaming video and audio from in-person insight facility, focus group facilities. So we all know what focus groups are. There's a product that's going to market. They want to find out what a group of people think of the product. And there were cameras in the middle of the room. They're called owl cameras because they kind of look like owls. And then this video was streamed back to the market, the client's offices. It was transcribed. It was analyzed, all this wonderful stuff. You can guess where this is going. March 2020 hits and we lose 25% of our revenue overnight because all the facilities are shut down. And I think if there's ever a moment when the CFO role gets elevated, it's a moment like that. I found myself, Jack, on probably weekly company-wide calls, explaining to people what our sustainability plan was, how we were going to make it through this very, very difficult chapter in the company's history. We had a product that was on the shelf, kind of not quite ready for release. We put all our resources. It was a Zoom-like product. That allowed people to do video conferencing, focus groups. We fast tracked that off the shelves, got that out. We actually recovered about half the revenue by the end of the quarter, by sometime in the fall. And it launched a whole series of events. In the summer, August, I was asked by the chairman of the board and the lead investor to step up as the CEO. It led to brokering a merger with our closest competitor, Confirm It, and creating a brand new company called Forsta, which we basically started getting the growth trajectory all up and to the right. It was acquired by Press Ganey in the spring of 2022.
Are you tired of manual, fragmented, and time-consuming expense management processes? Then the U.S. Bank Commercial Rewards Card might be right for your business. More than just a card, it's an all-in-one card, expense, and travel management solution that replaces outdated expense management methods with a single intuitive platform. Specifically designed to scale with your growing business, it provides the control and real-time insights into spend that you need. It integrates with your existing tools, lets you set custom spend policies, captures all expenses automatically, and liability is kept at the corporate level. Employees can even book travel right in the platform. You also get to choose your rewards, either points or rebates, all while saving money with no annual fee. So why wait? Manage your cash flow better and streamline your business operations today with the U.S. Bank Commercial Rewards Card. Visit usbank.com/CFO to learn more. We're going to jump to our mentoring round, and I'm looking forward to this because I do want to talk to you a little more about your CFO chapters. And especially when you first stepped out of BlackRock and into this role, your first CFO role. Tell us something about that. I mean, there must have been something you didn't, really realize about the CFO role. Again, you had observed CFO for years, but it seems to me like your first 90 days in the role, if you could go back and just give yourself a piece of advice, trying to recall who you were back then. Tell us about that first time you stepped in, though.
It really was about the people on the team. I had to learn very quickly who really had a handle on the numbers. And I found in my controller, Julio Huertas, that he was the quiet one in the room, but he was the one who really, really understood the numbers. And the partnership between the CFO and the chief accounting officer or the controller is critically important. And that interplay really helped me thrive and survive in that process. It was a very acquisitive company. We did 2 acquisitions while I was in seat. So we grew the company from about $30 million to about $50 million in revenue. And I learned a lot more about debt structure than I ever dreamed I would. And since then, I've done it a number of times again. And the debt covenants that go along with it, and sort of all the sort of calculations you have to do to make sure you're always in compliance. And so that was a big learning step as well.
Chris, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. Is there something most of your colleagues might not know about you, something from your past, some interest that you pursue?
Yeah, absolutely. So we almost hinted at this at the beginning of the call, but let's go right into it. Is my undergraduate degree is in philosophy. So I told you I was kind of a math kid, and I used to read these books that were sort of puzzles. They were more words than numbers. And what I found in philosophy, so it starts to make sense to people when to explain it this way. I saw philosophy as the rhetorical version of math. It's the grandfather of science. Quite literally, philosophia is the love of knowledge. And when you read texts like Immanuel Kant, the metaphysics of morals, or the critique of pure reason, the categorical imperative, read, Descartes, Meditations on First Philosophy. This is where we get the, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, even way back to Aristotle and Nietzsche ethics. These are all constructed arguments that work almost like equations. They start with a base premise, and from that premise, if you believe the premise, you build a second premise on top of it, and a third and a fourth, until you get to sort of an argument that at least the author believes is completely founded by logic. So that's probably something. It's the rhetorical version of math, but probably more interesting because words are far more subjective than quantities and figures. At least until you get to very, very high level theoretical math.
The academic path. I mean, did you ever think, I'll go on to my PhD? Or again, I see you as someone who might have gone any number of directions, but was it ever the academic world for you, or not really?
I did think about it. I would say I turned the idea over my head a few times. But I just didn't feel like the right fit for me. As much as I like to read and write, it didn't seem like I wanted to spend a lifetime reading and writing. I always saw myself as a person who works on a team, and solves problems as a team. And maybe that's what philosophers do in academia, but I really didn't take the venture in that direction. I was probably more inclined to get into diplomacy and international relations, or maybe even law. Because a lot of my classmates in philosophy were pre-law, because if you read a contract, you could see exactly why that would be. It's a very, very similar construct to what I described in some of these writings.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What about book selection for us? I'm almost scared to ask. We're going to have anything that has influenced your thinking over time. And again, it doesn't have to be a business book. It might be something you escape with or something you enjoy.
Well, they tend to be business books, but look, I'll start with one that was recommended by the lead private equity partner when I was at Focus Vision, the one who sort of endorsed my promotion to the CEO spot. He's over at Alton now. His name's Hayo Krosh. The book is $1 Trillion Coach, and it's the story of the Silicon Valley legend Bill Campbell. It's written by Eric Schmidt and Alan Eagle and Jonathan Rosenberg. And it really goes into that. When I say further up into the right, I start getting into what does it mean to work with other people and collaborate and understand the perspective of the person across the table from you. Which leads me to another book recommendation. It's a Wharton professor, was Neil Diamond? No, sorry, Stuart Diamond. I apologize. Stuart Diamond, who wrote Getting More. He's one of the most oversubscribed classes at Wharton. It's a negotiation class, but it's not your typical negotiation class that talks about BATAM and those those sorts of things. It's really about asking questions and understanding the person across from you. There's a funny passage where he says, if somebody tells me they hate my guts, my first response is, tell me more. Tell me why you hate my guts, right? And I think it's really important to strip away the emotion and really interrogate a situation and try to really find a good outcome. You're actually real time making me think of another book I just read recently, Adam Grant. I think it's called Think Again. And on that one, he also talks about conflict, being very productive. Actually, he talks about task level conflict, which is where you're unemotionally sorting out the optimal outcome between potentially natural tensions within an organization. I really, really enjoyed that. And then maybe another one would be Sapiens. I don't know if those of you have read Sapiens.
That's a great one. I think it's rather popular with finance leaders, but thank you for those others. We've had the $1 Trillion Coach before. So excellent. And again, Bill Campbell, the late Bill Campbell. So thank you for that. We are up to our final question where we ask you to look forward finally. And we want to know what your priorities are as a CFO for the coming 12 months. What would those be?
Yeah. So, in the spirit of partnership and collaboration, I really think that a successful strategic CFO is engaged with every single one of the ELT members. So really getting integrated with the team cross-functionally, partnering with marketing to understand pipeline generation, marketing efficiency, our digital strategy, our account-based strategy, with product on roadmap and ROI, with sales on productivity, pipeline health, deals. We've got a deals team. With our investors on the long range planning and, desired strategic outcomes, with human resources on performance management and incentive compensation. And then going back to this concept of the sailboat, it's just becoming the rudder to the sailboat to get the right balance between growth and profitability, and just sort of having that be my number one mandate, is watching the course of action so that we're getting the most growth we can out of what's effectively a finite set of resources, right? I'd also like to re-underwrite the long-range plan. I really like driver-based models. I like models that are driven off of, you find out what those key assumptions are, those 6 or 7 that really move the needle, and you kick the tires on them, and they tend to be more theoretical the further out you go, because you can't really shine the flashlight that far down the tunnel in terms of pipeline. And then really, I want to be someone who's prepared to act quickly in what's a very, very dynamic market.
Chris Nagy, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you so much, Jack. I really enjoyed speaking with you again.
Hello, everyone. Jack here. Hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes of CFO Thought Leader. Please know that I don't take for granted this opportunity to serve you. Your time is valuable, and of course, so is the time of our CFO guests. I'll admit to you, on certain weeks, I will pinch myself and say, hey, I get to do this for a living. I speak to all these impressive leaders. Undoubtedly, there are more aggressive interviewers out there, some who leave no stone unturned. But our swim lane is for finance leaders only. And those finance leaders have a unique style of leadership, one that is rooted in the burden of trust. In light of this, finance leaders must take great care not to forfeit this trust as they step into the role of being a more expressive leader. And that is what CFO Thought Leader is really about. That's why I try to remind myself week in, week out, how fortunate I am. Still, I need your help. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Email me your comments at jack@cfothoughtleader.com. And please visit cfothoughtleader.com. You'll find a listener survey right on the nav bar. As always, thank you for listening.